What's going on, everybody? Mortem here, this time bringing you a look at Beast, a grimdark TRPG set in a brutal medieval setting with some occult elements. This game released into early access back on October 25th, and because of its pretty striking visuals mainly, I wanted to take a look at it at the suggestion of a few viewers, so here we are. In Beast, we take on the role of a war veteran returning home after 10 years imprisoned by the enemy, having long since been thought dead. And much like the homeland our character returns to, we are scarred and traumatized from that experience, with the land and citizenry being ravaged by a hellish plague bringing on all sorts of death and destruction, and our own character, Anton Sabados, is not only haunted by his past, but haunted by some sort of demon that manifests itself as the Beast. And whether or not we choose to embrace or fight against that influence has both gameplay effects and presumably some effect on the story, but you don't see too much of that in early access, as what is available here is merely a chunk of the game, though they are planning a 2024 release, and from there let's start talking about some of these systems. The early portion of the game is a relatively linear experience, guiding you through a tutorial as well as a few missions to get you acquainted with how everything works, and then a little bit later on, as we are sent on a mission by the current ruler, let's say, to put a stop to this plague, we gain access to our camp, which is effectively a set of menus in between missions that allow us to both manage our party, recruit new members, before ultimately deciding what mission to take on next. But our character's actions and how we choose to treat our companions are things that the game puts an emphasis on, because doing things like attacking your companions in combat, which does have a purpose, we'll get to in a minute, alongside doing their quests that they might present to you can lead to them either being loyal followers or potentially betray you. Companions, of course, also have their own set of progression and options, things like that, which is important for the sake of party composition. And when it comes to combat in this game, in many ways, I would say it is exactly what you would expect from a TRPG these days, with a few interesting twists or just general approaches. Now, at its core, it's got a lot of very familiar systems. This is an action point-based system. Each character has 3, at least here at the start, that you can use to either move a set distance or make attacks. We have both ranged and melee options. Each comes with their own version of Overwatch on top of various abilities related to both your character and the weapon you have equipped, alongside the ability to utilize items, things like that. The system itself is also team-based, meaning that your entire team will go and then the enemy team will go, though the combat itself is gridless. That is to say, we can freely move around and position ourselves, and positioning is important as it affects our chance to hit. Doing things like flanking an enemy or hitting them in the back will increase your chance to deal either a critical or just hit them in general, which coincides with the game's half and full cover system to prevent you from being hit, of course. So like I said, all pretty par for the course. However, there is the beast mechanic that I mentioned. As Anton specifically kills enemies or companions, we raise our insanity meter. Now, when you initially take an enemy down, they simply fall to their knees and start bleeding out. They will die on their own if you let them, but you can also switch to a mode that allows you to execute them, which raises your insanity even farther. If a companion goes down and you choose to execute them, that immediately maxes out your insanity meter, and the reason you might want to do that is because this is how you unleash the beast. When the insanity meter is full, we can activate our beast, which transforms Anton into this demon-esque character that can attack with its claws on top of a variety of other abilities that are generally pretty deadly. The catch to this is that while the insanity meter raises and you inch closer to becoming that beast, enemies also get stronger at the same time. They gain access to new abilities, making them deadlier. And while being the beast is very strong in combat, obviously taking out your companions or just being a bad person in general will affect your relationships with them. So as this game progresses and when it ultimately gets its full release, I think what will be the most interesting thing to find out to me is how far-reaching these moral consequences are and if they add a significant degree to the gameplay. Because I hope they do, as this mechanic is what really makes the game unique. Though, as we participate in combat, earn experience for our characters, they will level up, which allows us to distribute a bunch of points. Now, interestingly enough, stuff. The game will allow you to auto-level characters if you just want to focus on the combat and not worry so much about the min-maxing or trying to figure out what to level when for a character. And for Anton in particular, they actually provide you a few different build options for exactly that will focus on different skill trees available to him, which is in addition to a special beast skill tree that presumably the more you use the beast, you'd be able to level up more and make it that much stronger. So because of that auto-leveling approach, I think this, from what I've experienced, will wind up being a relatively newcomer-friendly TRPG, because alongside those things, the game has a few different difficulty options on top of an Iron Man mode and a hardcore mode, though I will say that normal, which is what I played most of this early access period on, was very easy, so I'm curious to see what kind of balance adjustments come to that. So with all of that in mind, I think Beast here has a lot of potential. Again, they're aiming for a 2024 release. They're not planning on being in early access for an extremely long time, but the flip side of that, and what I haven't talked about much of up to this point, is that this game is rough around the edges. The developer, False Prophet, is aware of this. They have put out a sort of known issues thing that in fact includes a lot of what I'm about to mention, but things like the voice acting is really rough. Most of that's placeholder apparently. Some of the animations and conversations, etc. also are just like a little bit off, so clearly they've got some work to do in that department, and I imagine that's because with this being early access, the developer largely considers it to be an alpha, so while the game does have potential, it's definitely still rough around the edges. And as more of a final neutral note, the game is very gory, especially in its cutscenes, some of which also contain a significant amount of nudity, and while not really a big deal to me, or worse than many of the other games I've put on this channel, something to keep in mind to be sure. That said, that's pretty much everything I've got to say on Beast, which I'm happy to have checked out because, as I mentioned, it has a ton of potential. So I'll definitely be following this one and likely review it when it releases sometime next year. That said, that's going to do it for this video. I certainly hope you enjoyed it. If you did, like, comment, subscribe, all that YouTube jazz. But regardless of any of that, truly, just thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. May you wander in wisdom and have an amazing day.